University of Manchester at the Business Management Department, doing research about cryptocurrency trading and then NFTs and digital governance in general. And I'm also currently a visiting lecturer at the University of Law, particularly in LLB and criminology and financial crimes, which is partially related to what we talk about today. And I'm also currently an independent assessor for the MMU for management and some of the engineering degree as well, which makes me very close, brings me close to the engineering side of it and also the technical side of it as well. Anyway, so today I'm going to talk briefly about a research project regarding the digital platforms as environmental governance of the walkthrough analysis of decentralized climate action networks. So I'll first give a little bit of explanation of the central topic of today, NFTs technically in this platform, and how NFT works, and also how it's related to digital governance in general, and also what is the walkthrough method. Okay, so before we start officially, do we know what is NFT? No, not really. Oh, I'm quite surprised. Oh, beautiful. So some hands there. Anybody would you mind explain a little? A few words, possibly?
NFT is a non-fungible token.
Exactly, yes. Non-fungible tokens, yes.
Commodity that you can buy and sell.
Yep.
On local markets.
Yep.
Depending on what platform you use.
Exactly, yes. Through the platforms, normally, yes. Very good job. Well, thank you so much for helping out. So NFT in general, in full term, is non-fungible tokens, which is a type of token that is different from any other tokens. For example, dollars or any other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or anything, because non-fungible token, as you can tell from the name, is unique, is non-fungible. So what is different from non-fungible and fungible? Fungible token normally can refer to currencies, for example, dollars, to exchange to pounds. Technically, when you're exchanging it, the value is set. So you're exchanging for the equate or the exact same type of value. But when it comes to non-fungible tokens, everything is unique. So the value of itself can be subjective. It can be subjected to the collector, it can be subjected to the trader, it can be subjected to the market. So at the end of the day, cryptocurrency trading or NFT trading in general, in a lot of the time, can be very hostile as well by the end of the day. But today we're not particularly explaining or going into the details of NFTs, which is technically my own research on my PhD side. But today we're more looking into how these crypto or the digital assets, websites, and platforms use these ideas and apply it to the platform and impact the digital governance process. So the research question we're asking here is, how do platform affordances on blockchain environmental networks shape environmental decision-making, policy influence, and systematic transformation? There are a couple of things mentioned there, majorly related to policy setting, which is very much related to the platforms, terms of conditions, and etc. I'll talk about it later. The method we're using is very much related to Ben Light's and Duguay's idea and Berge's idea of walkthrough method, which is based on the actor network theory. I'm sure it might be familiar to some of y'all, that has been increasingly popular throughout the years, that treats everything the same. I'll briefly explain what is ANT, actor network theory, and I'll briefly explain what it means for walkthrough method as well. So, Light, Ben, a couple of people actually, they came to Manchester a couple of years ago on the Walkthrough Festival, specifically talking about this method, and then specifically referring to the actor network theory, which is basically a flat ontology that treats all human and non-human objects equally. So which means the table in front of you, they're arguing that the table in front of you, or the chair that you're sitting on, has the same social impacts in the social interactions as the person next to you. So not only the person can impact your ideas, the media can impact your ideas, but also non-human objects can also impact your ideas. And also, in the meantime, potentially impact your decision-making in the future, and how you behave in the future. That's basically what they argue. which this technically belongs to the sociological studies. A lot of researchers have very aggressively disagreed with this because sociology studies basically argue sociology is the beginning of everything. Social interactions is the beginning of everything. Human is the center of everything. So which means it brings into a new idea, a new novel perspective to view how technological artifacts itself could impact our daily interactions in human life. And walkthrough method is one of the most phenomenal research methods in this way that use the observational method to observe the use, not only the use, but also terms and conditions, the environment of use, and the exit, and all the affordances on the platform to determine how it impacts your decision, or the user's decision, or the people who are interacting with it, their decision making when they're using the platform, and further social interactions. So the case study here, we're looking into the Riga network. It is a leading Cosmo-based blockchain platform. It's a very broad way of describing it. Honestly, if you search the definition of their platform, you can find a very abstract way of describing it, which also kind of makes this research very interesting because research is about accuracy. And it's very hard to put an accurate definition of it even. And the platform for ecological credit insurance, carbon markets, and decentralized environmental governance. A lot of very big words to describe what they do. And we're going to see what functions they provide. So the walkthrough method, as we're talking about it, the couple of processes of how this normally being analyzed, proposed by Ben and a couple of different researchers. These from the app environment, including the vision. Normally we look into the App Store, if they have an application, of how they display, how they portray their own app, and the operation and the governance context. The operation here, we're looking into how do they profit, for example, for this platform or application. Registration and onboarding, so it's more of how to register profile, how do you get online, do you need to register with an email address or with your ID or with anything identifiable or not really. Or a lot of the time when we're doing cryptocurrency research, a lot of the time they will ask you to register with a wallet. Then what sort of content or what sort of data does that wallet contain? Everyday use, this is more about the affordances, what we're talking about, in case you're not familiar with the vocabulary of affordance. Affordance here basically means, in a plain term, functions, or the things that are on the platform that allow you to do things. Affordances and interactions, what interface they have, and the governance mechanism. This is more about specific to this research, the voting, staking, and policy influence. So firstly, the app environment. We take a look at the app. Well, this is technically a platform. We screenshot. The tagline, the operating system for ecological regeneration. Of course, you can tell this is promoting the idea of the digital side of the ecological regeneration, what they're trying to display with the color itself as well as nature related, but also tech related, which is very much what they do according to their function. Visual identity, immersive mountain landscape signals the authenticity and scale in some way. And the navigation, token, community, registry, marketplace is on top. Normally, this is a first sign of demonstrating what this platform do and what they're trying to promote. And a lot of the time with the functions, for example, they have a much bigger sign of register. We would interpret it as the platform would recommend you to register than any other functions, which makes sense, I think, with the discourse and content analysis as well. And the CTA duality of the registration outlined versus the marketplace, field, and then this signals the commercial priority, which means this is more promoting, not really about environment, but more of the marketplace, of the trading elements of this particular, with the goal of ecological ideas. The environment and community infrastructure in terms of how they display the network, how do they explain it, how do they try to introduce what is the Riga network. Riga network empowers communities to coordinate, fund, and verify regenerative action at scale. So most importantly, it is, I'm going to be plain about this, about money. So the money elements in all these descriptions, and also the Riga network provides trusted digital public infrastructure, Riga app registration, of course, a couple of different things to combine together as to show the authenticity and also the scale that they cover as the legitimacy of the app. The affordance finding here, the global network visual, which is not a connected globe, you can see on the side there, which is the Earth behind, frames the platform as a planetary infrastructure. So it's based on this goal and aim. Not a niche tool, the phrase coordinate, fund, and verify directly maps to governance and economic and accountability. So a couple of things we could identify through the observation of the first couple interface. Platform components and ecosystem architecture. That's a couple of things you can see. We screenshotted here. Most important side of understanding the governance of a platform, we look into the terms and conditions. Particularly mentioned at the bottom, a lot of the time it will have a self-explanatory side of what they do by the end of the day. For example, here, finally they throw out the stone, claiming that they do. It is a blockchain-based platform for issuing, trading, and governing science-backed ecological credits to power regenerative economies and climate solutions. So the keyword has been finally proposed here at some point. So the modular architecture, each component targets a distinctive governance function. So separating market, registration ledger, and incentive layers into the transparent and auditable modules. And on the side of analyzing these topics, I do want to mention some of the words are quite complicated, isn't it? For someone who's doing research in NFT and cryptocurrency, some of the words can be so hard to explain and hard to identify. And we'll mention it later as a recommendation or implications of further analysis, that how these vocabularies could actively construct a barrier for particular users to get into the space. Step 3, governance and community architecture. As you can see, join the network function. Join the network with govern, buy, and stake Riga, which now they put a US dollars sign in front of their own currency, and then Riga Builder Lab and Community Call. So the govern itself vote on the protocol upgrades, parameter changes and proposals, on-chain democratic process, which is very interesting that they mention it here as a voting process, as call it democratic process. But later on we're going to discuss it. With more funds, more capital, somehow it changed the amount of stake you hold when you're making this vote as well. And the stake, Riga, when it comes to the dollar sign again, secure the network and participate in governance, token-weighted participation. So finally, token has been repeatedly mentioned as a main function here. So you would need this to be used until you can make any sort of other impacts from that on. And then the Builder Lab, of course, sharing knowledge. This is kind of neutralized idea of forum connections, community of practice beyond the blockchain, which happens quite a lot with different NFT trading platforms. As you can see when you compare it to, for example, OpenSea, that community and education can be a very neutralized and an outreach process for a lot of different platforms in this area. And transparent update, for example, the offline deliberation feedback into the on-chain decisions. This has been mentioned, but there's no actual realization of how it works, etc. to be mentioned here. Focusing on particularly at the Riga dollar token as governance infrastructure. So, as we talked about before, the structure itself has been very sporadic, covered quite a lot of different content, and hasn't particularly explained how it works until the money kicks in, finally, the token kicks in. And the dual CPA of buying Riga and the stake Riga reveals a platform incentives architecture, which is staking is framed as a civic participation, secure the network, which we will discuss later as well, while buying is framed as market access. This blurs the boundary between financial investment and environmental governance participation and raising questions about financialization of ecological action. So it makes us want to think, is this actually about voting on particular things? Or is this about anything trading? Anything relates to the financialization and the financialization of particular objects in the economical or ecological situations. So a couple of findings consolidated here together. Altogether, the vision framing positioned itself as an operating system from planetary regeneration. Nothing has been mentioned about this particular token. Nothing has been mentioned about blockchain. Nothing has been mentioned about cryptocurrency here or financialization. And access inclusion. So crypto wallet requires create a digital literacy barrier. So this is what we're talking about when it comes to the vocabularies. Do you even know what it means? For people who don't really know what is token, it doesn't raise anything to them, doesn't mean anything to them. Can they actually use this platform without breaking the barrier? Which, find it very interestingly, in the OpenSea platform for NFT trading, the biggest platform in NFT trading, they have a whole page particularly explain all the vocabularies as well. Modular governance in terms of app registration, ledger, coin layers enables transparent auditing, but it creates complexity. So each module requires distinctive user knowledge to navigate. A lot of the time, honestly, I find it hard to navigate. I didn't particularly understand everything what I was doing as well. So I need a lot more investigation because this is what happens with cryptocurrency and NFT in general as well, as a lot of the vocabularies at the very beginning are proposed by individuals in the area. So there's no there's no clear definition of what it is, and there's no agreed definition of what they mean by the end of the day. Token powered, essentially here. So the token links financial stakes to governance power. The wealthier participants hold more voting weights, risking plutocratic dynamics in ecological policies. A lot of the time, it creates inequality in general of how you make a decision at the end of the day and how you can make an impact in the circulating process. Accountability by design. So immutable ledger and public attestation create unprecedented transparency. It does, well, this is more about the quality or the characteristic of blockchain or cryptocurrency instead of this platform itself. A genuine improvement over off-chain voluntary carbon markets prone to greenwashing. So a lot of the time, this can raise a lot of questions as well of how to articulate it by the end of the day. So, regarding the affordances, environmental decision-making, that the enabling affordances is what we're talking about, that explaining how affordances works, how functions works, how different technological artifacts with their functions could impact the social interactions. Instant global participation, no institutional gatekeeping, transparent carbon credit provenance via the on-chain attestation. These are the pro side of the beneficial side. Of course, the constraining affordances here can be the wallet requires exclusive non-crypto users and the token-weighted voting risks. Plutocratic governance, as we're talking about it there. Technical complexity disadvantages global south communities. These platforms can be, firstly, very hard to understand what they're talking about. And also, in the meantime, financialization of environmental action tied to investment returns and governments captured by high-stake validators. A lot of the time, inequality happens exactly at this point. That's what we're trying to raise. So, the system changes in terms of how platform interactions translate the system changes. The micro, meso, and macro, different levels of changes. For example, the user gains direct market access of the carbon credits without institutional intermediaries. I'm fully aware that the time might be restricted. I feel like I've been taking up so much. I'm so sorry regarding that. But I'll try to speed up. So a couple of points has been raised here. If you're interested, of course, I would be more than happy to conversation later as well, because there is a lot of content. And I would love to expand it as much as I can, but this is not my class. I'm fully aware of that. A couple of quick notes to wrap up the critical tensions observed in the walkthrough, the accessibility of we're talking about it there, and decentralized promises. Has it actually been actionalized, or has it been realized at all? And then the science-backed integrity of how they use the science and technological artifacts, and also the transparency of how the decision-making process has been decided and how it's been actionalized as well. And the impact assessment of the real-world environmental impacts of how these can potentially impact of the land steward payment, the on-chain attestation, the credit purchase from the very beginning. There are some points being raised here. Please do feel free to take notes if you're interested, and we can definitely discuss it further, of course. Recommendations. Briefly go through recommendations of the redesign onboarding for inclusion. Inclusiveness is what we're talking about for the accessibility and accessible issues here. The reform governance token economics. This has been an issue for a couple of times we've mentioned, and we found in different fields regarding blockchain-backed industries. Especially here, it's a lot more crucial. And develop civic liability tools, the civic monetarization, the monetary process, and also how do people regulate this by the end of the day and integrate the non-market ecological values. Are they actually engaged in this process at all, or is it becoming a facade by the end of the day? And quick conclusion, the walkthrough method has been applied, but of course there are some future development that could be implemented in this research, because currently it's purely based on the observation, also the content analysis and discourse analysis and visual analysis. So there can be definitely different things. For example, interviewing the key stakeholders or designers or the company itself or other audiences of their interactions and decide further from there as well. Anyway, thank you so much.